All right, welcome back to the Daily Fantasy Flex podcast. This is Brian. It is Sunday night, and I'm recording for the MLB Monday night slate with Jay. What's up, man?
How's it going, Brian? Just doing some research for this baseball slate. We had a pretty interesting NBA slate, and just kind of both sports have been interesting lately. With I think we've had 7 postponed games already for MLB, so not very appealing to guys trying to make the switch from NBA. And then they got hit pretty hard with some Derek Favors late scratch news tonight. We got all these rainouts. I'm just ready for stuff to normalize here.
Yeah, it is tough. It seems like it's worse. I don't really know if MLB is worse right now than it was last year. I feel like we probably say that every April.
I think so. I say it every day. But yeah. I think it's just, I don't know.
The postponements are going to go away because they can afford to postpone a game and make it up later. But as the season gets further on, they're obviously going to okay, we can't just postpone every time that there's a threat of rain or something. Eventually we're going to have the same thing happened in Colorado last year, where eventually they were like, we got to play a game every once in a while, so let's just wait it out. So it'll get better.
Yeah, I think we've seen some get postponed not even due to rain. I mean, there's snow in Detroit. We had cold weather a few times, so it's like it'll go away here soon, hopefully. But it's just not good. We have a lot of people on our NBA feed or MLB, I thought you guys said this was better than NBA, and it's tough for new people to kind of get into the grind with some of these things.
Yeah, I understand the frustration. It'll get better though. I promise.
Oh, yeah, we got green pastures ahead.
Yeah, I hear you. Sure. Did you watch Masters at all?
No, man. I just stick to Mario Golf.
Mario Golf is the best. It's so true.
Yeah, I watched a bit. Checking out that Spurs game too. We had a lot of stuff going on today. It's a lot of good games, but I saw Spieth's legendary choke. That's one for the ages. Definitely interesting weekend. Yeah,
a lot of high scores. Our buddy Pete did well in PGA, so that's great. We actually got yeah. A little okay. We actually had a bunch of people tweeted us say that they were thankful for our pods and stuff on PGA. So that's great to hear. Hopefully we can do the same for MLB. Let's jump into it. So we're going to kind of start with segments. The first segment we'll jump into is Vegas and kind of just go over the line. So we'll kind of start at the top. Jay, I'll kind of let you run through. Just kind of the top teams tomorrow, and I guess we can kind of talk about. We've been really talking about how Vegas lines are obviously important in MLB, but maybe just a little less important earlier in the year. And maybe we can discuss when does that actually flip over? I don't think yet, but I think it's probably a conversation worth having.
Yeah, I think it'll be soon here. And this slate that we're talking about, we are talking about the main slate on both sides, the one that starts at 7:05 Eastern. It's a 6-gamer. And on this slate, I think it's interesting. We kind of only have one game that has a respectably high total with the Royals and Astros, and with a total of 9. So it's nothing too flashy. We don't have a game at Coors Field after a weekend of fun. So it's kind of time to spread our exposure around. I think that's where Vegas plays a hand in guessing what the public will do as far as ownership. So, as of this recording, we also don't have a line or total for the Cubs game at Wrigley.
Yeah, and for people who are fairly new to MLB Daily Fantasy, that's going to be the case for Cubs games this year. That they're always the last line to come out because they're waiting on weather and the wind, especially. So that's just going to be the case. If you see articles or hear podcasts or anything that talk about the Cubs, you're not going to have a line until kind of later in the day on that day. So definitely be aware of that. We kind of talked about just kind of getting away from maybe the top sort of teams, and that was kind of in reference to some of the bigger slates that we were talking in opening day. So this main slate, which is a little bit smaller, do you treat it any differently, or is it still kind of maybe even more incentive, I guess, to get away from Vegas, I think?
Yeah, I think the smaller the slate, the more you want to get contrarian. So I think you got to utilize kind of the Vegas data we have. The Nationals are minus 280 favorites to win, which is obviously quite high. We have a lot of middle-of-the-road totals. So, I'm not sure it's necessarily a good or a bad thing for tournament players. I think you'll have, with these lowest totals, to kind of limit the chalk. So you kind of have to look at other avenues to get contrarian because you don't have as many clear-cut teams that are chalky. But I think we do have some kind of chalky plays on this slate still. So I think with the small slate, you want to utilize the lines in a way to get contrarian a bit.
Yeah, I hear you. Okay, let's move on to the next segment, which is going to be pitchers. We're going to give 2 intriguing pitchers and then 1 to fade. And that'll be kind of the format that we do for this podcast. So, Jay, I'll kick it to you. Give me your 2 pitchers that are kind of intriguing to you and why, and then I'll do the same, then we can go over our fades.
All right, cool. Yeah, the first intriguing pitcher is kind of a no-brainer given this slate. Max Scherzer, it's nothing special. This is just an obvious cash play on both sides for me. This is something I'm not going to overthink. Highest strikeout rate of any pitcher on the slate, facing arguably the worst offense in the league at this point. They were near last in every single offensive team statistic last year. Like I just brought up, the Nationals are minus 280 favorites, which is absurd. It's just something for me. I don't want to overthink. I think Scherzer, it's not as intriguing as it is just kind of easy, cold hard lock for cash given this slate. And the other guy really had to dig deep, and this one's really intriguing, is Nick Tropiano. He's a guy I suspect will carry very low ownership on this slate. There just aren't that many kind of off-the-wall guys, picks you can go with such limited choices. So I like the strikeout rate for Tropiano. That's something that stands out. He averages over 1 per inning. So assuming he, if on the chance he does have a good game, kind of gets deep innings, 6, 7, he'll have 6, 7, 8 strikeouts, which is good kind of on this slate where you're going to have some chalky top plays and you're going to have to spread exposure around. So, I like the solid command that he brings. I think the upside is there for the high strikeouts. And, I think the exposure also plays a part of why I like him a bit more. So I think he's 5,400 on FanDuel, which is dirt cheap. So you can definitely load up on bats to kind of make a contrarian team opposing for people who pay up for Scherzer.
Yeah, I like those 2 a lot. The first guy I'll go over is Sonny Gray. I said last pod that he's kind of a guy that I don't roster a ton myself, just because I'm more of a tournament player, and so I naturally just go for guys with high strikeout upside. And even in cash, I think there's a lot of studies that show that you should really target strikeouts kind of regardless of what sort of contest format you're going. I think Gray might be a little bit of an exception to that rule. I think he has so much safety tomorrow, which is kind of why I'm looking at him in a smaller slate. He doesn't have a lot of K upside. And also the Angels really don't strike out that much. So I think people are going to see that as like a double negative, but I think it's really just like if the guy doesn't have a lot of K upside and the guys don't whiff anyway, it's just kind of like, okay, well, that's fine. They just kind of like, you're not going to get strikeouts and you just kind of accept that. The guy wasn't going to get strikeouts anyway, really, against most teams, let alone against the Angels. So it's not that big of a deal. However, what makes Sonny Gray so interesting is that he just has an elite whip. Guys really don't get good contact on him, get on base. He's just a guy that just controls the game a lot. And the Angels have one of the worst WOBAs against guys like him. So I think that he's just really set up well to kind of limit their runs. Vegas kind of agrees with that. So I think that he's just a really safe pitcher to take. I don't think he's a ton of upside, but I think he's going to get you 20 to 25 DK points. And you can kind of count on that. The other guy that I think is interesting is Brandon Finnegan. He's another guy that has high K upside that's kind of in that 5K range on DK. You talked about the other guy, but Finnegan is another guy who's cheap but has K upside. He had 9 Ks in 6 innings in his first start this year against the Phillies. I know it was the Phillies. I get that. But it was still 9 Ks in 6 innings, which is good. The Cubs actually whiff fairly often. That's who he's facing tomorrow. The Cubs do have a pretty good offense, a little bit less so with Schwarber out for the year. But, they do have really good batters, but they are prone to striking out every once in a while. They have a .263 strikeout per at-bat rate, which is pretty high. And I think that Finnegan's just an interesting tournament matchup because they're going to people are going to take the easier matchup, kind of equally high strikeout upside and lower DK price in Tropiano as opposed to him. So I think he's kind of contrarian play that you could just pay up a little $900 extra more and get off Tropiano, like you said, but still kind of get the upside that you're looking for. So those are my 2 guys. Who's your guy to fade?
Yeah, I like it. My guy to fade is actually my stone cold cash play on the slate. It's Max Scherzer again, kind of double dipping, using him twice. So And the reasons, obviously I went through all the reasons why he's a great play in cash, but he's not a great play in tournaments because you have a lot of guys. His ownership would be so high, you'll be sharing similar roster construction on a small slate with 60% of everybody who uses him in tournaments. We saw Matt Harvey today. He was a minus 260 favorite, and he was a pretty massive bust. He made a mistake on a slider to Odubel Herrera, and then that's a wrap. That's it. There goes your lock of the day. So the likelihood of Scherzer or even Harvey doing this are low, but in tournaments, we need that. That's what propels you to the top of a tournament, is when these off chances come through, and that's how you separate yourself from the pack. So I think you need to take advantage of these situations when obvious cash plays carry high ownership in tournaments. You want to be kind of on the other side, team fade Scherzer, if you will. So that's my fade of the day. I think contrarianism is so important in baseball in general, just the nature of the sport, the high variance. So when a guy's going to be this highly owned on a slate, I'm all for fading him, and you can load up on your bats instead.
Yeah, I agree. And kind of my guy to fade is for a similar reason. It's Steven Matz. He's my guy to fade. But if you look at the data, it's a little tough to make the case to fade him. In a lot of our model, he's the highest rated pitcher. He's probably going to have high ownership as a result of kind of his data points. It's pretty good in a lot of areas. His matchup, kind of the implied run total of his opposition, and a lot of things match up where I think that it's going to just set up where people are going to maybe target him in sort of Gray and Iwakuma as opposed to some of these other guys. So I think I really just am worried about his ownership in tournaments, and so that he's a fade. If you kind of want data points to back that up, he's a high line drive percentage, and his batted ball velocity is really high. Though I get that has to do with just the fact that he throws it really hard, and exit velocity and pitch velocity are very correlated. Harder a guy throws, the harder comes off a bat. I don't think that's crazy. I just think it could be worth it to either pay up or pay down in tournaments, just to kind of get off of these kind of interesting plays with Matz or Iwakuma or Gray, or kind of in that 9K-ish range, either to pay up for Scherzer because people are going to want to load up on some of these bats, or pay down and take a chance on one of these low guys like Finnegan or Trepiano. So that's my reason. Let's move on to bats. So give me some two guys that you think are interesting as far as batters go.
All right, one, it's not an interesting take or a hot take or anything, but the guy I'm looking at is Bryce Harper. I don't really need much time to kind of go in and explain why Harper is arguably the best cash play on the slate as a hitter. We've already gone into how he just smashes right-handed pitching, and now he gets to face Bud Norris, and the Nats are implied to score the second highest runs on this slate. I think Harper's about as safe as you can get as a cash play with kind of his high walk rate and exceptional power splits. So don't want to overthink that one too much either. And then a guy I like a lot who I think is really intriguing is Eric Hosmer. Haas had a 378 WOBA against righties last year. Obviously really good. He gets to play in a park that has the highest park factor on this slate. He's batting cleanup. Royals are projected to score 4.2 runs, which is actually on this slate up near the top. So he's the number one first baseman on most of our models, I think, for a reason. So he's another guy I'm looking at pretty hard. Yeah.
No, good calls on that. Two bats for me. The first guy I'll start with is Stanton. I mean, he outside of Bryce Harper or Trout or whoever. I mean, you can even include those guys. I think he might be the best hitter in baseball. The dude's just a monster, especially if you put him against a lefty. The dude just crushes lefty. I'll give you the numbers today. WOBA 461, 534 ISO, and 828 slugging. Is that okay?
That's stupid. It's a shame he got injured last year because he could have put up some serious numbers.
Yeah, he's insane. He just crushes lefties, and he's almost the like. There's some auto plays for me. Like a lot of people talk like Donaldson versus a lefty. Mm-hmm. I think the most like auto play for me is Stanton versus a lefty, honestly, in all like baseball.
Yeah, we have a lot of guys that are just lefty mashers, and it's like when they're facing a lefty, you probably want to get some exposure to them.
Yeah, so Stanton, I love tomorrow. And I think actually he might have ownership reduced because of his implied runs.
I do too, yeah. But it's always like that for the Marlins.
Yeah, so maybe not, but his team sucks. And Matt's the other reason is because of what I just talked about in the pitchers. I think Matt's could be a popular choice with high ownership, and I think people naturally don't like.
They're not going to pair him up.
Yeah, so I think that it could lower his ownership a little bit. And like if I can ever get Stanton versus lefty at even a little bit reduced ownership, I'm loading up. So
yeah, I like that.
All over it. The other guy that I like is Michael Conforto for the Mets. He I think he's just really interesting batter in general. He's the profile of a really good power hitter. If you look at his advanced stats, whether it's hard hit percentage or batted ball velocity or any of that stuff, I think it was the same last year. I think he had a lot of kind of bad luck when it comes to just things not getting out of the park. I mean, you could talk all sort of things, whether he was at the parks and whether it would have been a home run at a different park. There's just all sort of different luck factors that comes into play. I think he had bad luck, but I think his profile as a hitter is really good power. He just hasn't really seen it come to fruition, but I believe it will. And he just has a really good split against righties. So 268 versus righties, and gets a really bad one in Cozart, who is allowed 1.327 home runs per 9 innings, and just an awful WOBA allowed to batters.
Conforto's good, man. I'm pretty high on him in general. I like him a lot.
Yeah, so I think that he's super interesting. Cool. Give me a couple value bets on FanDuel.
Yeah, FanDuel, we kind of have a bit of soft pricing. We've seen like Jay Bruce was underpriced for a bit. I mean, we have guys, so it's kind of always like that on FanDuel. But a guy I'm really high on that's underpriced is Anthony Rendon, just 2,900. I think he's just, in the matter of that, he's just underpriced immediately, kind of interests me. And then, you throw in the Nationals are implied to score 4.5 runs, Rendon in the 2-hole. And also he has the highest amount of pro trends out of any hitter on this slate, higher than Bryce Harper. So just one more reason to kind of like Rendon here. And then another guy kind of digging a bit deeper is Ben Zobrist. I don't like love him or anything, but there aren't that many guys on this slate that are kind of great plays at a cheap reduced price. Zobrist had a 403 WOBA against lefties last year. I like him more if he hits in the 3-hole, which he has been a bit. We could see him hit in the 5-hole with Bryant moving up to the 3, so that's something to monitor. Regardless, though, either way, just 3-can FanDuel at a weak position. That will help save salary to kind of afford Scherzer and cash games. I think getting a piece of the Cubs, kind of dependent on the total and what that comes out of, is a smart thing to do, especially this early in the season.
I like it. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, what do you got for DK?
Yeah, I got two guys on DK. Yeah. Well, maybe kind of 3. I'll give you. Right. First guy is Michael Taylor. The Washington team implied total is one of the highest. They're kind of crushing. And Vegas kind of expects him. Mike Taylor's not been a part of that. He's over to start the year.
Yeah, man. Don't be scared off, though.
He sucks. But he's 3-4, and he's part of this team. And eventually, he's gonna have to get a hit, right? He's just not gonna just never get a hit in Major League Baseball.
Oh yeah, I think the only way you want to discount cold streaks is if there's reasoning for them. I mean, an 11 at bat sample size is nothing. So you got to look at his lineup order, kind of the game,
which is projected to be first, which is projected to be high. Yeah. Exactly. Everything is in his favor. His price, his lineup order, even his year-long stats. The only thing that's not in his favor is his recent 11 at bat sample. Which
and that's nothing to look at for me.
Yeah, so I think that just kind of load up, and maybe he'll be reduced ownership. You can catch him in a tournament, and he'll kind of regress to the mean a little bit. The other guy I'm interested in is going to bring up another guy, but we kind of have to talk about him is Brandon Phillips. He's 3.5 on DK, and the other guy I'm kind of bringing up is Billy Hamilton, who's 4K, so I couldn't list him as a value bet. But both of these guys have really good stolen base numbers and have elite speed. And Billy Hamilton, we know sort of his speed and his speed potential and sort of the potential he can get on base. He had a 4 stolen base game last year against John Lester, and that's who they're facing tomorrow, which is insane. So Lester is just easily the worst pitcher as far as allowing stolen bases. It was
by far. Yeah. I mean, I think Pablo could steal a base. on him.
Oh yeah, actually,
I'm pretty sure. If he takes his belt off, he's got wheels.
True. I like it. Yeah, so Lester's just a guy you always target. So I think Billy Hamilton is going to be kind of a popular take in that regard just because of that. But I think that Phillips could be kind of a sneaky guy. I think he has a lot of stolen base potential. He's also hitting in a much better order, a lineup spot. He's projected to hit 4th, whereas Hamilton's supposed to hit 9th. So probably we'll get an extra at that. He's actually a guy that can get on base. His WOBA is like 100 points higher than Hamilton, who could steal a base if he gets on, but that's
the whole thing with him. Yeah,
he's just a terrible hitter.
He can't steal first.
Yeah, he can't steal first. Yeah, whereas Phillips actually is fairly decent against left-handed pitchers. Not an elite WOBA, but like decent enough for 3.5 against Lester. So I think he's kind of a sneaky play.
I like it.
Yeah, cool. Let's move on to stacks. I'll let you go. Who's your stack?
Okay, I got a stack. I am all in on the Mariners. I think I'm going to just make all my lineups with Mariners players. So many combinations.
I like it.
Colby Lewis is the opposing pitcher. And, he's just made a career out of serving up bombs. That's like all he's good for, really, his entire career. He's 36 years old. He's going to be facing a lineup that will likely have 7 lefties. Colby's righty. So I'm taking all exposure to this team. I want it all. I don't want anyone to even play a Mariner. 1 through 4 stack, 2 through 5, 3 through 7. I'll take a 6, 9, 2, 4. I don't even care.
Wow.
Colby Lewis is not a good pitcher. And the only negative, I know it's in Seattle and it's not the most hitter-friendly park, but Colby Lewis could make the Rome Coliseum a hitter's park. So, this is a team I'm definitely looking to target heavy, very heavy. So, I think it's important to kind of stress being a bit contrarian on this slate. I know Seattle doesn't have the highest implied run total, but this slate, you just kind of have a bunch of kind of mid-tier teams. So, that's the stack of the day that I'm going to be utilizing. What do you got?
Yeah, no, I like the Mariners call. Maybe if you want to run a lot, you could go to our lineup generator and choose the Seattle stack and pick 1 through 4 or whatever, and to just generate 200 lineups.
I'm going insane. I'm going crazy.
Yeah. Do it. Yeah. No, I like the call. Mine's a little bit similar to a team that is not like the Washington, Houston, Kansas City teams that everyone's going to stack. It's kind of a middle team, which is actually the teams that I really like to focus on in tournaments. Lesser owned, but not necessarily less upside, as we kind of have talked about with the sort of Vegas being a little off earlier in the year. My stack is the Mets. And I'll give you some reasons why. I think they're going to be low ownership because of Vegas. I think their best stack actually isn't a straight stack, so I think that's going to kind of take people off. So I think their best stack is Granderson, Cespedes, Duda, Walker, Conforto, which is actually a 1, 3, 4, 5, 6 stack on DraftKings. Taking David Wright, who is not good.
Not the same.
Yeah, not the same as these guys. And so I think it's going to either people are going to be off of them in general as a stack, or people are going to try to include David Wright in the stack, and they're either going to leave off Granderson or they're going to leave off Conforto. I already talked about Conforto and his sort of profile as a power hitter. Granderson is obviously a good batter as well. They're also facing Cozart, who allows a tons of hits. His WOBA against projected against this team is really bad, and home runs. He has a 1.327 home run per 9 rate. So his projected kind of WOBA and home run allowed is one of the worst in the slate. So just a really good matchup. And those guys just all have positive splits against righties, and most of them have pretty elite ISOs. They don't necessarily have the straight lefty versus righty or righty versus lefty splits that we like to target. Some of them are reverse splits. Conforto obviously has a straight split, but someone like Neil Walker actually has a reverse split, which I think is actually kind of a sneaky way to find value guys that their splits is actually a little bit different than their opposite handedness. So the Mets are the stack that I like for me for sure. Stat of the day, I'll let you go.
All right, my stat of the day is it's a pretty big cop out, but the stat is 0. In that there are 0 games finally that we have to worry about with rain. It's the first day, the first slate really. So Houston has rain, but Minute Maid Park has a roof, so
I like it.
We're in the clear. So take a day off, Weatherman. We don't need you. For a real stat, though, I think something I looked at was Dexter Fowler leading all kind of regular players who play more than they don't in average exit velocity so far. Obviously, it's a very small sample size, but he's hitting the ball 100 miles per hour so far on average. It shows, too, of course, because he has 10 hits. 10 hits in his first 5 games, hitting leadoff in a potent offense. I think Fowler's kind of been a bit underutilized in these first few games. So with the small sample size, I think it's something kind of worth monitoring, him hitting atop that lineup.
Like it. My side of the day is actually something I want to dig into a little bit with you. So my side of the day is a little bit twofold. Iwakuma has a dud percentage, which we define at FantasyLabs as the percentage of games in which a player is 1/2 of standard deviation below his salary-based expectation. Just kind of a definition of that. And he has a dud percentage of 30%. Not great. Obviously worse in the slate. Not great in any slate that you put him in. So a guy who could blow up. He obviously struggled last game. And, we kind of took a look at it, and he has an average velocity. His last game was about 7 miles per hour slower than last year. And you and I were talking about off the air, and I just kind of want to talk about this a little bit. That both stood out to both of us. And I think it's important, we have all these sort of advanced stats and all sort of stats, whether they're advanced or simplistic or whatever. And some of them are small samples. And even when you go into a trends tool and you kind of look up a stat or whatever, and something stands out to you, I think the next step is to really, if you want to be a profitable and good DFS player, is to try to figure out what's going on. So that stood out to both of us, and we spent like a good a little bit of time before we even started the spot trying to figure out, okay, he has about a 7 mile per hour, even though it was only a game. Why was it that big of a difference? Why did he lose 7 miles per hour velocity on average as compared to last year? Which is just massive. And what we found actually was that he's not throwing his fastball at all.
It's dropped in the last few years, yeah. Iwakuma has always been a pitcher, just kind of frustrating to figure out. He goes on some really, really good stretches where he just throws a bunch of solid starts in a row. He's a great command pitcher, low walks, good enough strikeouts, serviceable, plenty serviceable, and eat up innings, not a lot of hits. So, yeah, it's just a maddening player overall. But, yeah, I think it goes into kind of pitches, and what did we broke it down into his sinker.
Yeah, it's his fastball versus sinker. Last year he started off the year throwing about 15% of his pitches were fastballs and was throwing a lot of sinkers, over 30%. And then as the year went on, that switched because as it turns out, he just wasn't really any good at his sinker, and his fastball was pretty good. His whiff rate on his sinker was 3 or
4%. Yeah.
His sinker is not a great pitch. It's not a strikeout pitch. It's not a pitch that's any good. And you kind of look at batting average against, and guys are crushing his sinker. Guys.
Yeah, I want to hit against it.
Yeah.
I think I could slap one. Yeah. Texas Leaguer or something.
Yeah, I even looked it up last year, and I looked at slugging percentage against it. And every single month last year, there was a plus over 500 slugging percentage in every month but one. It's just not a good pitch. And he kind of figured that out as last year went on. But for some reason, in his last game, which happened to be against the Rangers, who he's about to play again, he reverted back to that same sort of just odd pitch type distribution where he threw only about 15% of his pitches as the fastball, which is kind of his better pitch, and he threw over 30% of his pitches as the sinker. So I think that's kind of the reason why he struggled. And so, kind of going on, we figured out why his velocity is down. It's because he's throwing not as many fastballs. So it's easy to kind of maybe write that off and say, okay, that's not as super predictive. But I think it could be predictive if we think there's reason to believe that he could go through stretches where he just doesn't throw his fastball. Because if he's going to be a sinker pitcher as opposed to a fastball pitcher, I think he's a lot less effective as a pitcher and maybe a guy we want to target.
Agree. Yeah, and he's 34 years old. Maybe he might be losing some zip on the four-seamer. So, yeah, it's all things to kind of account for and definitely monitor, kind of similar with Fowler. You want to monitor these stretches when the sample size grows, of course.
Yeah, and in our models we have recent average or recent advanced stats, and then we have full year advanced stats. And
Yep.
as we get further into the season, the recent ones are going to normalize because
Yeah,
just
differentials.
Yeah,
be awesome.
Yeah, but definitely the really main point here was that if you see something weird, research it. That's what the profitable DFS players do. They can pull these stats out of their hat, and they kind of know why a guy has a lower pitch velocity recently, or whether it's just kind of random variance, or whether it's a reason, and that's why they're profitable and that's why they're good. So if you see something weird, like we saw that it was this kind of just weird 7 mile per hour difference in velocity, take some time to research, and I think it could be useful. Let's keep on moving before we wrap this up. We'll finish with a bold call of the day. I'll let you.
Yeah, we'll go real quick. I think my bold call of the day kind of ties into earlier with the pod with my Scherzer fade advice. My bold call is that Max Scherzer won't be on the winning team of the FanDuel squeeze tomorrow. And this is my bold call because my bold call part B is that I will have the winning team because I'm doing the full Mariners stack on how what's the max on that tournament? I don't even know. Is it 200 or 400 maybe? 57,000 entries.
Yeah,
whatever the max is, I'm doing the max of Mariner stacks. I'm not even kidding.
That's bold. I like that.
100%, yeah. Okay. That's it. Not even making a team that doesn't have at least 3 Mariners in it.
I love it. Yeah, I love it so much. Yeah. Double down. Yeah.
Yep. Cool. All right. What do you got?
My bold call of the day, going back to Stanton. I talked about how much I loved him against lefties. So my bold call is Stanton double dong. He's going for 2 home runs tomorrow. I know it rarely happens.
That's rare.
We looked it up. He did it 3 times in 74 games last year, which actually is pretty darn impressive that a guy can do that in 74 games. He could multi-home run. But yeah,
I think you got to look at how many guys are capable of double dongs realistically, and then you're not going to win a tournament on a night where someone double dongs and you don't have them. So I like the Stanton double dong call, and I like your reasoning to get exposure to him as well. I do think he'll be a bit under-owned with some exposure headed towards Mats that will drive down ownership of Stanton because he's facing their pitchers. So
for sure, maybe in some of your Seattle stacks you can mix in a little Stanton.
I will. So, yeah, don't you worry about that. Yeah, I mean I have 400 Seattle stacks, so
I know. Yeah. I like it. Yeah,
I'm gonna get a lot of exposure spread. So
okay, I like it. Cool. That'll do it. I guess we ran a little bit longer, 2 minutes longer. We try to keep these to just about 30 minutes. So we're running a little bit long, but we'll try to get these on par. I definitely wanted to. I just thought the Iwakuma conversation was really interesting. Definitely wanted to give time to that. So
man.
But I thought
it's all good. You cost. I threw some pizza rolls in the oven, and I expected it to be ready, but. They might be a little burned, but that's all right. No worries.
Yeah, but your Seattle stacks are just going to win all the money. You can buy all the pizza rolls.
Buy so many pizza rolls. It's going to be insane.
Love it. Thanks, Jay, man. Thanks for listening, everyone. And hopefully you also take Seattle stacks just in different tournaments so Jay can win that, Yeah,
I'm going to take them in all. But, good luck, everybody, on this slate, though, for sure.
Yeah, thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. We'll talk to you guys on Wednesday for the next pod.